It's just plain wrong that family businesses bring so much to society and our economies, but they don't make it past the third generation. Welcome, Mr. Rob Ferguson, today to our Designing Your Legacy podcast series. Mr. Rob Ferguson has, since the year 2010, been a trusted advisor to family businesses. Prior to this time as an advisor, he also had a distinguished career in leadership, including 10 years as a chief executive officer at two different companies. One was a public company with 300 million in revenue, and the other a family business with about 100 million in revenue, where he successfully managed the restructuring and sale of the company. Mr. Ferguson has led companies through 10x growth, has turned struggling companies around, and has conducted more than 100 million in acquisitions. So today, Rob, with his company, Ferguson Alliance, is on a mission to increase the lifespan of family businesses. He believes that with the right foundation in place, businesses, specifically privately held family businesses, can live on indefinitely. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Angelina. It's wonderful to be with you today.
Thank you so much. It's great to have you. And I understand you're coming from Houston, Texas.
Yes, it's nice and warm down here. We're about 95 degrees. So it's a great summertime weather.
Wonderful. So let's start with some of the heartache and the statistics. What would you say is the biggest problem or some of the problems? Let's start here and then move to the good news.
Okay. I think the biggest problem that we're seeing with family businesses over multiple decades is the decline of the life cycle. That's primarily being prompted by a lack of united vision that's a long-term vision that all the family members and all the family business stakeholders can get behind. So if you don't have a vision, that just means you can pick any path you want. And when you have multiple stakeholders picking any path they want at any point in time, you really don't get anywhere. So that's really what we see as the single biggest problem.
Sure. And I can imagine that as the revenues increase, everybody wants to have a bit of the profit because it supports their lifestyle. But there's also a bit of a crossroads that come when the next generation or the third generation, fourth, fifth generation say, maybe I don't want to work in the family business anymore. So, yeah. So what are some of the other internal problems that come up?
Well, I think we definitely see conflict with money. As more stakeholders become involved in the business, obviously there's more demands on the business profitability or the profit distributions. And so we have to look at how does a family balance what the business needs and wants are versus what the family business needs and want, or the family needs and wants are. And that's really delicate. And when you have many members in there, it becomes a real challenge. And so I think that is probably the single biggest reason. Again, it gets back to this shared vision I was telling you about, is that if we don't have that really defined and declared, then it's going to be a rough ride for the family. It really, sure. So that money is the biggest issue that we see. Certainly, the other issue is what I would just say competency. Family members just don't have the skill set or the competency to continue that business. And they feel obligated. The family members feel obligated to be there because their father asked them to be there, but that's not really what they want to do. They got a degree in fine arts. They didn't get an MBA from Harvard to run the business.
Sure. So some of those internal struggles also come up. Do they get to be true to themselves? Is it their legacy, the family legacy? We're going to get into all of that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. What are some of the other problems that come up that many people either don't know about from the outside world or nobody talks about?
Family personalities. I was with a client yesterday, and the eldest, there's 5 children involved in the business, plus the mother and the father, and it's a very large international business. The oldest sister told me, I just can't have my younger brother bossing me around. I can't do that. I can't work with them. And so you have these family personalities that you've grown up. You remember the cousin that would come over to your house and break your toys. And so now you have to work with that cousin, or that cousin's now your boss. So I think that doesn't get talked a lot about, even internally with the family. They don't want to talk about what the real underlying issues are, and those have to get dealt with to be able to get breakthrough and get everybody
Functional.
aligned to where the business is going.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a statistic, something along the lines of, correct me if I'm wrong here, that 12% make it past the third generation and 3%
Correct.
past the fourth. I mean, that's like,
Yes, yeah, correct. And when you think that really about 70% fail, even just going from the first to second, I mean, it's just horrific in my mind. And I think that's really my life's passion, is to try to change those statistics or try to at least extend the life cycle of these family businesses. And what I'm really pleased to see is there is an emerging trend now, particularly with this next generation, as the boomers, my generation, start moving out of the way. The next generation is starting to say, you know what? We can still be owners. We just don't have to be the operators or the managers of the business, which is terrific, because that is going to be an accelerant for the life cycle of these family businesses, where families can continue to own and control, but have professionals come in and manage the business.
yes. And we're going to get into in a moment regarding business first, family businesses compared to
Yeah,
family first. Okay, so here's my next question for you. Why do you feel empathy towards family businesses, and or how do you relate to them?
that's a great question. I appreciate it, because it allows me to talk about my two grandfathers. I did not realize what influence my grandfathers had on my life, probably until I was in my late 40s. But every summer, I would spend half my summer with one grandfather up in Indiana, and then the other half the summer with my grandfather in Oklahoma. One owned as a bank, and one owned retail florist shops. And I went to work with them every day, and I loved it, and I enjoyed it. And so I think going back to my roots of just being around family business entrepreneurs, and then my experience in working with family businesses, both very successful ones that were able to have continuity between generations to generation. They actually are the fifth generation. I learned a lot of great best practices. And then being part of a family business that was dysfunctional and could not make it to the fifth generation. So the affinity that I had is I just fell in love with family businesses. And I realized that they're very important to our economy. When we realize that 70% of our GDP is coming from family businesses, we realize that the majority of philanthropy is coming from family businesses. When we realize that the majority of our innovation that's going on in the world today is all coming from family businesses, you realize the significance of this whole enterprise of family businesses. And it needs to be saved. It needs to be cherished. It needs to be nurtured. And so that's what gets me up every day.
That's lovely. Thank you so much for sharing. And have any of the experiences when you had served in the U.S. Army, has any of that helped
Oh, well, sure.
regarding the structure, the discipline?
Well, I think so. Yeah. So I did go to Texas A&M University. I was in the Corps Cadets there, and so I got some of that discipline and structure very, very early on. I knew I needed it because I basically put my way through college, and I wanted a good return on my investment, so I needed some structure, and the Army did that as well, and it really translated to business. I think the military learnings, the rigor, the discipline, learning how to put that structure into business was very helpful. However, learning about entrepreneurs and the importance of having a dynamic business model as well is very important. So what I've learned by bringing these two cultures together, business entrepreneurs, maybe the military structure discipline, bringing those together, what I found is that the optimal place for business to get to, we call it the prosperity zone, is when that business is in perfect balance between flexibility and structure, and trying to find that equilibrium all the time. That's when businesses can get to their prosperity zone.
That's wonderful. So I know you've mentioned briefly that you've worked with functional family businesses, dysfunctional. Can you share a couple of stories, whether it's when it was very successful and working well as some of the tragedies And obviously keeping things discreet and
Sure.
names. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, let's see. There's so many that come to my mind. I think the one that I tell quite a bit because it was very disturbing at first, and turned out with a very happy ending. Is two brothers-in-law had worked in their family business most of their lives, and the patriarch owned all the business, but found himself on his deathbed, dying. And right before he passed away in the hospital room in ICU, he gave the two brothers-in-law 50% ownership of the business. And the boys, they were in their 40s. They were very thankful, is the way they explained it to me, and very appreciative, surprised. And then the patriarch said, "And boys, you'll be bankrupt by the end of the year." And then he died. And so there's the two boys go, "Well, what just happened? Now what do we do?" And they made this pact between the two of them that they would never allow the business to interfere with their family relationship. Period. End of story.
Well, that is lovely. Yeah, but what an introduction.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, it ultimately it got tough for them. They also had made a decision that they would only make decisions consensually, 100%. So if they couldn't 100% agree, then they wouldn't do it. So that started causing problems about the second year in their business, and their business started to decline. Then I was called in to help them, go through the whole process that we do go through to get a back to their house of prosperity, a zone of prosperity, as we like to call it.
Yes, and you have a wonderful graphic, and I'll include a link if you'd like to the webinar you did regarding the Ferguson Prosperity House
Yes,
and the
sure.
nine keys. Okay, wonderful. Are there
Yeah.
any other stories worth sharing?
Yeah, I think the other one that really has influenced how I approach clients that do want to sell their business, they don't have a next generation, and it really made a meaningful impact to me. It was just a few minutes before midnight, I got a phone call from my client. We had successfully arranged a marvelous transaction. He was going to get multiple millions of dollars wired into his bank account the next day, and it was going to be effective at midnight. He called me and he said this was the worst day of his life. He was very distraught. And what happened is that he realized that his whole life was over in his mind, that he had attached his identity to his business,
Which is huge for entrepreneurs because they give so much, and
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And so he said, "I don't even know what I'm going to do tomorrow morning. I don't know what my purpose is." So we talked it through, but that event, by the way, he's doing fine. He's happier than ever before. But that made me realize, as I work with entrepreneurs and as I work with business owners, I've got to make sure that, number one, not only is the business ready for a sale, but is the owner ready for a sale, both financially and mentally. And then we can look at the business readiness to see if it's ready for sale.
Yes, because there's humans involved.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, and a lot of real life pivotal moments regarding transitions, and we have to talk about those feelings. If not, they're just left with being invisible, and that's no fun for them going forward.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, wonderful. So I know we both talk about legacies day in and day out. And if you could have a microphone to speak directly to the members of any of the privately held family businesses, what would you say to them? Would you say that there are 3 to 4 steps, or what would you say if you had that megaphone?
Well, I would say if you're the current patriarch generation, that means you're in charge. That it's your obligation and your duty to set the business up to make it to the second or third generation. And you have to do, to me, it's that sitting generation that needs to do the heavy lifting. It's hard work, but getting that unifying vision together, establishing that family constitution of how family members enter, how family members exit, making those tough decisions before you get to the decision.
Exodus and entry, yes.
Yeah, and do it in a collaborative way, right? You do it with your other generations, bring them along, but too many times, Angelina, I get the sitting generation, the patriarch generation, say, I'm going to let the next generation worry about it. I did all the hard, I'm here. And so the can just continues to get kicked down the road.
Yeah. Well, it's huge responsibility to take, a look at something. It requires, like you had spoke earlier about, you have to do the inner work as well as the technical work.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And as a human species, we love to conserve calories, but in the end, we need to be able to invest, some emotional intelligence into these conversations, what they call the difficult conversations.
Yeah, no, that's right. And it really and truly, if you think about it, legacy is really, it's the definition of success, and it's got to be beyond just money and wealth. It's really got to be more about, well, the mark you're going to leave on the world today, and the core values that you want the next generation to carry forward. And if you leave that to chance, then we're going to end up with the statistics that we're ending up with by the time we get to the third and fourth generation.
Yeah, and I think a part of it, before I move on to the next question, is that in society today, there are only so many guides that can help navigate or facilitate those conversations, because if not, it's back to news, sports, and weather. And I don't want to open up that can of what happens if it becomes messy, and humans are messy, and these conversations can get messy, but sometimes they have to get messy before they can get structured and organized, and the exodus and the entry, but also, just like you had pointed out, so everyone can feel like they have a purpose, whether they're leaving or they're stepping up.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. As you were talking about, humans, and it gets messy, and I remember my wife telling me many years ago that the heart has to break in order to grow, and so similarly here, I look at that same philosophy with businesses. We have to do the hard work, the tough decisions, sometimes even the tough love, to allow the business legacy and value to grow, and to be able to make it from one generation to the next. And I just don't think you should kick it down to the next generation, let them figure it out.
Yes, very much. So a lot of the times, businesses will have those governance documents in place, the Constitution, et cetera, et cetera. How do you get them, though, to have their actions follow their words? In other words, do you have to have any agreements in place so that it's not just documents in a binder somewhere or a series of binders, but people are actually walking the talk?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And so depending upon the size of the size and complexity of the family, and the size and complexity of the business. If it's a large family and a large business with a lot of complexity, we actually have two parallel paths. We establish a system for managing inside the business with the business governance practices, and then we establish the family planning that runs concurrently, and then we have the system for managing the family plans, and so that's primarily managed through a series of meetings, whether they're board meetings or they're family meetings, and we build what we call our system for managing, and we make it happen. We put the rigor in place, the discipline in place. That's the structure I was talking about earlier. By putting that structure in place, that every quarter I've got to show up to the family meeting, or every quarter I'm participating in the business board meeting, and we're going to do business, and we know exactly what's going to be on our agenda and what my role is. So yeah, you have to put some systems and structure in place to make it live.
And I can imagine that adds the accountability. And if you can get that upward spiral for the culture of the family as well as the support, then it can be strength upon strength that gets built, compared to the default of, I'm just going to have it my way.
Yeah, no, well, that's right. And don't forget, another important aspect of all of this is relationships. And we have to feel related, not just be related. And we have to have a relationship between the family members as well as the business managers. And so many times that's why we do these family retreats, where maybe a third of the time is going to be business and 2/3 of the time is socializing and playing. But really, it's not just socializing and playing. It's building that relationship. It's actually getting to the feeling of being related, particularly when you think about the trend that I'm seeing. Families are keeping ownership, but they're hiring professional managers. they want to be related to those managers. They want those managers, those non-family member managers, to understand their family values, their family legacy, to perpetuate it. So the structure, the rigor, the discipline, it's all good, but you got to build in some fun, and you got to build in some socialization to really make it all work.
Yeah, I can imagine that builds the trust.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. Well, yeah,
yeah,
you know that you can't have trust if you don't have a relationship.
yeah.
And yeah,
One of the things you spoke about is when I listened to your webinar is how often it can move from that's my brother, that's my sister, in that loyalty, to all of a sudden the rivalry of,
yeah,
well, they better not get more than I do in the numbers. Or so I think you're pointing to, again, that human space of um, being able to, have more than just something that's written on a piece of paper, but having those exercises that can build the bonds and design more than just the balance sheet.
yes, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. So are there some of the best, would you share some of the best practices or techniques that you have used throughout the years that work really well? And this could be for anyone who's watching, whether they're a next gen or maybe a senior member of a family business, or anyone who's watching in today's knowledge economy.
So the best practices for a family meeting, is that, or best?
Sure, sure. I know that when you built out your 9 keys to prosperity,
Yes.
it came from the field. And when I mean the field of, like the CEO who walks the field or walks the floor of the
Oh,
company, it's like
yeah,
he kind of uncovered distinctions regarding, gosh, this works well, let's not do that. Or we got to try that again.
yes. Well, no, in fact, our entire model is based on learned lessons the hard way. And I would just say that the overarching best practice is learning to communicate. And what we really try to emphasize is, listening, learning how to listen with intentionality. And that's so hard to do, particularly when you're related to your boss, or your coworkers, your sister. And you have to learn to have empathy, and learn how to listen in such a way that you understand that other perspective and point of view before you have a reactionary remark or come back. So I don't know if I'm answering your question precisely. We spend time on teaching and training how to communicate well, both in a structured and in a non-structured manner with our family members.
I think that's an excellent best practice. I think the skill of listening is something that people don't understand in the nuances. I know as coaches, many times we're trained to,
Yeah,
there's something called L1 listening, L3. L1 could be where you say to me, I had a great Thanksgiving. And I say back, me too. All right. But L3 would be where I hear you and then I ask a question back to explore, well, what was amazing, Mr. Ferguson, about your Thanksgiving? And then
yes.
it's a deeper way to connect. And I think many times family members can have the opportunity to learn about listening distinctions and how to perhaps not be triggered, yeah.
Yes. So even all leaders in general, this is one of the things that I learned a long time ago about leadership, is you want to listen to learn, not listen to debate. So many times leaders are trying to prepare to be right or make a statement or give a direction. And when they're doing that, they unintentionally are preparing to debate the other person. And so the whole mindset shift that we try to teach is you want to listen to learn, and you want to listen to understand, not necessarily listen to agree. But you got to understand first what the other perspective is.
Yeah. That means setting aside the ego sometimes.
It's tough. It's tough. Good ego, bad ego. We got to put the bad ego aside.
Yeah. Wonderful. So what's at stake for these family businesses if they don't get it together?
Well, they lose their business.
Yeah.
They actually, their legacy melts away potentially, because so many of these families' identities are built into the business. And I just think it also, America loses, economy loses. I mean, they're the engine of our economy, and we need to do everything we can to help these family businesses thrive and not continue to decline like they are. The average lifespan of a family business today is about 24 years. Now that's better than a non-family. That's better than an S&P business is 15. But still, we need to get it back to where it once was.
Precisely. Very nice. Yeah, absolutely. I think that many times the identity is interwoven with the family business and the business's history. I've heard family members talk about, let's say that they were connected to a company. Let's say, I'm just making this up right now, a candy company, and that candy company is sold. Other people in the community can still see those family members as being related to Skittles or
Yeah,
Nestle, and those are just names I'm throwing out. So
yeah,
just yeah, but it's very interesting because it is so enmeshed sometimes and intertangled, both good in both the good and the bad. And gosh, if that's been the identity of the family for 3 generations or more, and now all of a sudden it ends, it's
yes,
like, congratulations, you get to start anew, but where's that course?
yes. Well, and it's a huge burden on the next generations to try to have to live up to great grandfather's vision or
The
legacy.
shoes.
And yeah, it is. And so again, I'm going to come back to this emerging trend of families are starting to realize you don't have to work in the business to own the business. In fact, it might actually be better for the business and its stakeholders to bring in professionals to manage the business. And then you have certainly the family provides the governance from the board of directors perspective.
Yes. So one of the distinctions you made is between family first businesses or a business first family. Would you take the opportunity now to speak into this difference and then share with me how many family businesses today do you think know about this distinction?
So it's one of the very first questions I always ask when I get into an engagement is, do you consider yourself a family first business or a business first family? And usually I get a quick reaction, and usually it's more around values. It's what that family's values are. And then I have to dig a little bit deeper and get them to think a little bit harder. Well, really what we're talking about is, where do you put your priorities? When the decision gets really tough, where are you going to be operating from? The best interest of the family or the interest of the business? And so then as we start going down that road and answering those questions, then we can ultimately make a declaration with the family of what we're going to be, a family first or a business first family.
Yes, I just
So,
want to repeat what you said because it froze for a second. You said, are they operating out of the best interests of the family or the business?
yes, correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
That's
Wonderful. How many family businesses out there, members, do you think know this distinction, that they can operate from either A or B?
So we just did a poll on that a couple of weeks ago on a webinar, and nobody knew the distinction. Now, I don't know that it was a small group, but nobody understood the distinction. So I don't know the answer to that question. I think that it's a hard one. It's a hard question to answer because you're really close to it. So a family first business, we know a lot of family first businesses, right? We engage with them regularly. It may be the local bar, the restaurant, or the dry cleaners, and they're providing great contribution to that local economy, and they're certainly providing for the family. But at the end of the day, if somebody needs a job, they're going to hire the family member first to fill that job, and that's perfectly fine. There's some very successful family first businesses out there, very successful ones. The difference, the business first, puts the best interest of the business ahead of the family needs. And so that means we're going to hire the best person for that job, not the family. Now, if the family qualifies, great, but they still have to go through the same process that a non-family member would have to go through to get that job. And that family member would be paid at market rate, not at a family rate. They'd be paid at market rate.
Right,
So,
right.
so those are kind of best interest decisions and declarations that get made, and that helps us build the family constitution going down the road. The reason why we really work primarily with business first families is because those are the ones that have the ability to continue their legacy, to go from one generation to the next. Usually, what we see in family first businesses is they have a harder time to grow and scale, and they have a very challenging time going from one generation to the next.
Yeah, but thank goodness that there are possibilities, and so that they don't have to just feel like it's all or nothing, or like you had talked before about, I think you had called it the family trap, where they feel
Yes,
boxed in. Yes.
yes,
So tell me
yeah.
about the family trap for a moment, and then I'll move on to the next
Okay.
question.
Yeah. Well, no, we do. We call it the family trap, and it's where
Very
the
common.
yeah, it is. The owner wants to exit but can't, because if he exit, then the sales are going to go down, or um, all of his family's working in the business, and so he can't sell the company, because if he sells the company, there is no company to sell because the family's key to running it. So those are some signs that the owner is in what we call the family trap, and we have to help them, you know, dig their way out of that, and become have the business become less dependent on the family members, as an example.
Yeah. So how awesome it is that these resources are out there, because it can't just be that what I say is so rigid, because then it's easy to break. You got to
Yes.
kind of make it more of a willow tree compared to an oak tree.
Yep, that's the whole idea. It's balancing flexibility with structure. You said it.
So what would you like your personal legacy to be?
Oh gosh, I guess if I could, I don't know if it'll ever be known anywhere, but my big dream is that I made a significant difference in extending the life cycle of family businesses, at least with the clients that I work with. If I can end my life knowing that was something that happened, then I'm going to feel really good about, it was good. It was a good life. It was
Yeah,
purposeful.
you gave it all you got.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. What values would you say that you get to honor by this passion and purpose?
Oh gosh, I think really it does come down to honesty and safety. In other words, having clients feel safe with me, but it's really, I think my core value is, it comes from my family motto, which is a very long one, coming from Scottish heritage,
Okay.
and it's about perseverance. It's sweeter after difficulties. In other words, that problems can be solved, and even the toughest problems, even the biggest problems. And I am a very optimistic person, and I think with that optimism, we can solve any problem that is in front of us. And even our little logo, family logo, is very old, is a thistle, a color of a thistle with a bee going into it. And so, yes, sweeter after difficulties.
Oh, that's wonderful. Are you related to any of the clans?
Yeah, oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. We were not Highlanders. We were Lowlanders.
oh, okay. Okay, got it. I think my father's related to the Clan Buchanan.
Okay, yeah. Well, we're Fergus is where it started, and then Ferguson, obviously.
Got it. Very cool. Any parting thoughts regarding the subject of legacy, the prosperity plan?
Um, my only parting thought. Well, first, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I highly encourage these family owners and businesses to seek out third-party advisors. You want to seek people that have been there, done that. Um, when you're trying to embark on so let's say your family constitution, if you've never written one before, it would seem like you'd want to have somebody that can come in and help give you that guidance. Not tell you how to do it, not do it for you, but just guide you through that. So a lot of family businesses are hesitant at times to bring in third-party advisors for some of these types of activities or initiatives. But I think it's just as important as bringing in an attorney for a legal matter or bringing in a CPA for a tax matter. You really want to bring in an advisor for continuity and succession matters.
Very nice, very nice. Well, thank you so much for being able to join today. I appreciate it, and I think that the wealth of knowledge that you've brought forward both gives insights, but also just shines a light on that they don't have to be trapped in the family trap.
That's right.
Yeah, and there's when you talk about let me just make sure I get this right, family first businesses compared to business first families, that this idea of bringing in non-family members paid at fair market value can add to the future success of that family business in restructuring it, so it doesn't have to be like you talked about, the family members worrying about if they're going to argue at Thanksgiving dinner, or if they are going to have that rivalry if Ted gets paid more than Bob, or Bill gets paid more than Sally or Sue. And I just think it's a wonderful resource. And I appreciate that you've spoken into it, because these resources are there. It's just a matter of having these voices come forward to speak about it, because oftentimes people want this, but they don't know how to enter the marketplace to ask for a third-party advisor, like you spoke
Yes.
about, like, where do they go? What do they Google? What do they put in the search bar? And so I just appreciate that you've spoken into this niche, this area, because it's important for people out there that are looking in the landscape and they're trying to figure out who do they retain and how do they take the next steps forward, so they don't have to be a part of either the 12% or the 3%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much. And I think that this conversation is valuable, whether it's a member of of the next generation or the senior generation. So thank you so much, and I appreciate you joining today.
Thank you, Angelina. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Okay, you too.